So today we are going to discuss about the first what it takes to be embedded device security. So which we have discussed previously also, but I will again highlight that what we are up to today discussions of the embedded device security. And there are the three more heard about terms, that the confidentiality, the integrity, and the authentication, CIA. It's not the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency I'm talking about. This is the CIA I'm talking about in the terms of IoT security. So that we will. And then the key cryptographies. So we have the symmetric keys, asymmetric keys, public key cryptographies, what we will be discussing. And then chain of trust. And once the time permits, so you can see on the hardware panel, we have the two boards. So we will be provisioning and through the keys to these two boards, and later on see that how it operates. And we will also be showing you that how the problems means what are the different risks that can pose to your IoT device once it is into the field. So this is what we are going to discuss. But before I would start, I'd like to spend 5 minutes with you interacting that which of the IoT project you have implemented recently. If anyone has implemented any IoT project recently or have implemented security into this, so I would like to invite him and just talk about his project in a minute, so that we can know that what are the recents that you have implemented now. So if you have implemented any of the IoT project recently, you can just write it to the chat window. I'll invite him to the mic for discussions. No one has implemented any IoT project? Don't be hesitant. It's I'm not asking for you any secured information, just a discussion point so that we can talk about the security in the use case. Okay, maybe not, you have not implemented any IoT project. So embedded systems, so you are working in the embedded systems. Any embedded system projects where you have implemented security? Any local project where you have implemented security in your project? Okay, leave it. So if I give you a project to develop an embedded system, or maybe an IoT project which I give you, a project where you have to gather the data from the different of the nodes, like the attendance data. I give you a project where you have to develop a system where who is coming into your home and when he has come in. So it has to be recorded through a camera, and that camera will be transmitting that data to the cloud. So what level of security we will be implementing into this? Don't be shy, guys. This is not the grading I'm doing here. It's if you will discuss, it will be a more beneficial session. Otherwise, just a one-side delivery is not a beneficial thing for anyone. if I have a project where I'm gathering the data from any of the endpoint, like the camera image, which I'm gathering, which is from your main gate of your home, and I am transmitting that data. I have to develop this project where I'm transmitting this data to a cloud. Which sort of security do we need any kind of a security implementation into this? And if I don't implement security, what are the risks it can have, where we can have the tampering? Just a common question I have asked you. Um, it's very unpleasant that a small answer that I'm expecting from you. You all guys are into this domain or not? All of you are developing some systems or into this embedded system domain or not? No answers? Okay. Okay, so let's see this thing that uh, what all sort of security risks you have been exposed to, and what are the methods that we can implement into this. And if you are new to this, like you have not developed the IoT, so definitely you need to select some platform where you can develop the projects which is having all these features, because you must be hearing of lots of platforms, and you must be maybe working on them. If I take the names, so the Arduino platforms or Pi platforms that you are working, maybe the Node platforms. So these all are the devices that you have, which is making you giving the connections to the a cloud, or maybe your embedded devices which you are getting connected. But actually, once it comes about the security, so they are giving the communication, they are capturing your data, and then sending it to your cloud. Maybe the provisioning, everything is getting done. But once it comes to the security, so you will have to come to the basics, hard basics of using the controllers and their trust platforms. Ready-made platforms like these are not been helpful for you, because they don't implement the all of the security concepts, and in some of the certificates are been implemented, so you don't have the permissions much to alter on them. So that's what also you need to select, as I can see that you have not developed the IoT projects yet, maybe. So whenever you are trying to develop it, so come to the basics of the microcontrollers platforms, and there you need to work around it, where you can implement all the things related to the security and all the things. So just advice initially. So as I'll be discussing what the use case I have given you, and some more use cases I will be taking. So I will be discussing those use cases during the session, that what are the exposures. So if I see, what is this? So this is an iceberg we see, and you can ask to any of the ship seller that what the risk of this iceberg is. And you must have heard about the Titanic crash, and thereafter some more also, but Titanic is the famous one, which doesn't calculate about this risk, and now it has become a history. So same thing should not happen with your system also. So always don't believe, go on the perception, don't go on the perception of the 10% of the thing. So if you will seeing about the iceberg, so it is the 10% of the iceberg that is being seen on the top of the surface of sea, and 90% remain beneath. So that is the actual risk. The top is not that much, but the actual risk is the beneath of this iceberg. Same way for your IoT device also. So you have developed your IoT application, you have deployed into your field. Some of the initial risks that you might be thinking of, that one should not tamper my device, or one should not get entry into my device, maybe some key methods that you have implemented for the handshaking of your devices. So that's what the methods that you have implemented. But by knowing that these are the known kind of risks, but actual risks for your IoT device communication is little different. It is not just a risk related during the handshaking of your device, but it comes during the message transmission. It can come later on also. It can come during the firmware updates. So it can come after the update has been done, and then a new endpoint could be selected. So you must be thinking of that that only the device security is more important, and maybe the access I should not provide, any of the software access or hardware access I should not provide to any other user of my device. But actually, once it comes related to the embedded device security and the IoT security, so there the risks are way more different. And that's what we need to look at, the different of the security platforms, and who are tested in the industry, and it is working in the industry for the last 40 years, that the certifications and the trust platforms we need to look at. So actual risk is little different, and it is the job of the security analyst. So this is also a very booming domain, that and we have discussed this thing in our previous of the series also, that how do we analyze about the security. So if we are developing any of the system, and any of the system, whether it is a connected or a non-connected, so what could be the security threats to my system? So that's what also we need to analyze about, and there it comes the actual risk. So always we have to be very careful about this. And whenever we are going to design and deploy any kind of a system, so the expectation level of a different of the categories and different of the grades are a different one. So it is the designer, you are the designer of the system. You would like to keep your IP protected, whatever the code segments which you have developed, or maybe the hardware inclusions, hardware accelerators you have included into your IC. So all these things that you need to protect at the firmware level and at the VLSI layer. Thereafter, the business requires the protection of their brand. So if it gets compromised, and you must have heard of lots of attacks like Webber-Pen attack, thereafter the Jeep attack was there. That was a famous one. Thereafter, these days you must be hearing of the banks security getting compromised. The Bitcoin was getting means the wallet transfers of the Bitcoin. So there are the lots of news that you must be hearing of, and it actually compromised the brand of the business. So business wants to protect their brand so that the data breach should not happen, and because that data is of the client, and in many of the zones, like if right now it has been implemented in EU and EU zone, earlier it was in USA. In India, we don't have that much very tight security policy for the data. Government is coming up with all of them. So client want their data to be private and secure. The service provider requires the value. So what the third party softwares they are providing. So they need to be protected. That's what the expectation of the service providers are. And the third party, if it is involved in your system, so whatever the rules and the rights you have set for them, that needs to be protected. So these are the small set of expectations that everyone have. So what we do in this case? what we need to do the achievement for the security. So first you need to educate yourself actually that what are the security risks and what are the methods that we have for the security for each and every layer. As I have talked to you, that it is a layer wise security is implemented, always a layer wise. So the layer wise implementation of your security and the knowledge about that is very much required. And this is the knowledge. So this is one of the knowledge series that you can think of, that we have been delivering to you, that what are the poses, exposures are there. Then practically, if I am seeing, so it is the secure boot and the program space that you require. Now this program space can be on your chip or maybe out of chip. So that's what we will be discussing this thing also separately in one of the session. And next to it, that is that how we can do the secure boot and what are the risks involved with the secure boot inside the chip and missing secure boot area inside your chip or maybe keeping it access extra to your chip in a secure element. So the secure boot is the area where your main hash for your program and the main binaries of your firmware is kept, so that if anyone alters, if anyone gets access to your flash device where your program is stored, and nowadays the SPI based, so there is a two kind of a flash we have. One flash is which is on board on your chip, and then we are having the features of SPI based flash. So this is our CPU, and CPU has the flash to store your firmware, and then we have a separate memory which is connected to the SPI to this CPU, and then this flash. So maybe in your lots of ESP devices, such kind of features are getting used, and so that these two areas must be secured enough so that one cannot get access to it. So even one get the hash value or maybe the key value of your firmware space, so he can alter your firmwares, but the secure boot is given in such a way that next time the firmware boots from this space, so if the image of the main firmware and the boot that doesn't match, so the device won't start, device won't boot. So that's what the secure boot area is. You do require it. Thereafter, the hardware secured space. So that so you have the fuse bits in your controller. You have the fuse bits which actually protects your program memory space. But fuse bits could also be tempered with maybe by the hardware injection methods. So then we have a separate a chipset which is there on our PCB, and a communication medium is developed for the communication with that chipset to our main microcontroller, and then this hardware secure space is designed so that the main of the keys, like once you will be developing the IoT system, so you will have the keys, the public keys, private keys, and everything, so that those keys could be stored into this hardware secure space, and we can avail the benefits of the security. And then it comes the ecosystem and infrastructure. So this is what we have talked about, the PCB level and the communication level of the securities. And then it is the complete of a security, whether it is the physical layer of a security or maybe giving the access to the systems to any of the third party, and then complete ecosystem security. That's what we need to plan about if we plan to achieve the security. So all these things come under our three of the terms: the cyber security, the embedded security, and the physical security. So in mid is the embedded security, which mainly talks around the PCB level of a security, the device level of a security actually. If we are talking about the cyber security, so it talks about all the communication layers, and the embedded layer of a security. So cyber security is the embedded security is the subset of the cyber security. And in this, we talk whole about the security concepts. And then the physical layer of a security, that's what is the security of your device, the physical access to that device, the cablings, and all the things. So all the three things are covered. And if you are expert into the cyber security, so both the things are getting covered automatically. So if so we will be largely talking about the cybersecurity methods. So cybersecurity is actually the main set of the implementation of the securities, which cover all the things. And whenever we talk about the security, so what we think of that, if I have a device over here, and it has to communicate with another of the device. So this is a device A we have, and then we have a device B. So if what we think that uh, if A is sending some data to B, whatever this data is coming, if I know that who is A, and if the data is coming from A, I know, and I know that who A is, I trust A, then the message which is coming from A is secured enough, or maybe the right message I'm receiving. That's what is our general concept is, but this is not, because in the mean, once it is getting transmitted, one can eavesdrop it, one can alter it, one can put another hash onto it, and the data could be altered into the communication medium. So that's why the three terms are required: the confidentiality, the integrity, and the authentication. So in general of the talking terms, the confidentiality comes first. So I believe that whatever the message that is coming is being sent from A, and that is a secured message. So then it is okay that it has come from A. That's a general concept. But in the reality, so it is not like that. So because once we are receiving the message, and that message is having some kind of an encryption, and if I am able to decrypt this message with some key, we think of that it is the right message. So we take it the encryption is, or the authentication. The encryption, if I'm able to get the encrypted message and am I able to decrypt it, so whatever the message has come, it is a correct. So encryption is generally thought of as an authentication, but this is not the case. It is a wrong concept that we have in the security. Encryption is never thought of an authentication. It is something beyond than this. It is something beyond the authentication. And if you are going into the details of all these three terms, which is the basic of the security implementation. So actually, the first it comes the authentication. So first you have to, whenever you will be implementing the security, so first you need to authenticate that from which of the source the data is coming. So if A is sending the data to B, so B has to authenticate that it is really A who is sending the data before receiving of any of the information. So authentication is the first and the foremost requirement. Then we check the integrity. So once we have identified, authenticated, the A is there, then we check the integrity of A, means whatever the communication line A is using. So that must be integrated, that must not be used by any other third party. And it is a direct communication that is happening. It is a completely signed and certified. Then we have made a trust. So this is these two things establish a trust between the both of the party. So this comes under the trust chain establishment, these two terms. So trust we have established, and then we come to the message. Now, if we have established the trust into the person that or that he is the real one who is sending me the data, then there is the two of the options we have, whether we want to keep confidential or we want the open set messages. So if it is this confidentiality that we want in our data, if we want that the data which is getting transmitted, that must also remain encrypted and it should be secured enough, then we form a complete trust of chain. So this message, so this is the message part, and this also gets the key. And then we have this complete trust of chain. establishment. Otherwise, if we don't want that message, like we are sending some real time data. So in that real time case, we don't have maybe the encryption in a time, or maybe the space that we don't have for the encryption, maybe some video data I'm transmitting. So in that case, we can only authenticate and integrate and check for the integrity of the person from where the data is coming, and we can leave the confidentiality. So two of the these two are the must, and confidentiality remains an optional. Generally, in case of data transmission, the text data transmission, or maybe for the kind of important data, the confidentiality is always been considered. But if it is a real, very high real-time data, which doesn't involve the security risks, and you don't bother about that the little more incorrectness in the data, then the confidentiality you can leave around. And this is a risk that comes with the CCTV systems, or maybe this system which I have just talked about. So the real-time transmission of your camera data that you are transmitting to your cloud device, and this is the real-time data, and the face informations, face recognitions, that's what you all are transmitting. So here you have a catastrophe that if you are not implementing the confidentiality, so that data could be trapped in between, and it could be mixed with another of the face data, and you will having, at the end of the day, you will be having the wrong message set. Even you are integrated, you are authenticated that the camera, this is the data which is coming from your camera, which is placed at your home, but the data which is coming from the camera is got eavesdropped in between, because maybe the confidentiality you have not implemented into it, and it will be eavesdropped, and the face information could be changed. So this is depending on the scenarios. So this is the priority of the cryptographic function is, and this is how we move from the device level to the message level. So authentication and integrity always is related to the device, and confidentiality always relates to the message which is coming to you. So this is another example that the bulbs, that the Ethernet bulbs or the wireless bulbs that you use nowadays. So is the message, so what we check, that is the message authenticated. So from the source where the message has come is the real source. Thereafter, he had signed that message or not. So if everyone sender will be signing that message, so that's what it needs to be, verification of it. And then it comes the message part. So command is actually the message part. So if it is not confidential, so what will happen? Maybe if these two things are authenticated and integrated, but somehow during the message transmission time, I have got the control of your this device, your router device somehow, or maybe I have got the control of your whole IoT network. So you have sent the bulb the message to turn it off, but through my device, I have altered the message in between, and the command is changed to on. So you wanted to turn it off, but I have turned it on, so I can control your IoT network and do such kind of a thing. So this is happening at the third layer of a security. So even doing the encryption you are doing the encryption means even authentication and integrity you have checked, you have not implemented the message encryption here and transmitting it. So that's a very easy to get captured if it is not the encryption is not there. But you have encrypted the message also, and not implemented your key. So it is possible that the message is there, you have encrypted it, but you have not implemented your key onto this. So then I can catch this and put my key, which I have copied from your key, and can implement this thing. But if you have implemented your key on the message also, and then the digest is being prepared with your key, with your private key, with your public key of your service provider, and the encryption is also implemented. So all the three things that you have implemented, then it becomes a confidential message, and then it goes to the cloud, and it remains a secured communication. So this is how data moves from the one of the end to the another one, and through the different of the steps. So the first thing is the identification, also so the authentication. That's what we have talked about. So authentication and is always been termed as the identification or authorization. So what is the meaning of all these things are? So in just one line, if I have to talk about, so identification is that that you are claiming to be something or someone. So maybe the serial number of your device, that would be the authentication. That would be the identification of your device. And websites, like you are entering into any of the portal, or right now you have entered into this Zoom. So if I have been made it like that, you can only access it through the user ID and the password that has been provided. So here you are identifying yourself with your names, and thereafter the password that has been provided to you. So authentication, that has been you are getting authenticated by providing the passwords, and then the unique link that has been provided to you. So first you identify yourself with the IDs, and then the password is there. So through the password you can be authenticated. In some of the cases, you have the captcha words, you have the random number generators. So all these are the methods for the authentication of the person. And once you are getting identified that you are the real person, you are getting authenticated that the password is got true for you, then you are authorized to access the system. So this is how the flow is. And then you get the access. So thereafter you are allowed to make the communication on the network and can do the things. So this is the generic process of and then this is a concept actually, that how the security is implemented related to the cryptographic terms. So it is not just the encryption that we do and it is the cryptography, but actually we have to completely establish the chain of trust, and everything is covered under that cryptography things. So the easiest method of implementing this is that identification we have done, and then we want to identify. Means doing the identification, and maybe we are sending the message, and then we have to find a cheapest of the method so that it won't be a heavyweight on the communication, and we can be secure enough. So hash functions are the most used term. So anyone have used hash functions before, or have heard about the hash functions? Not used, but any of the what the hash functions are? Okay. So we have the various size of data. Whenever we are transmitting the data over the network, so we have the various sizes of the data. So if we have to implement the security, so how would we make a secure information? How we can identify that whatever the message that is coming from the other of the source is complete, is integrated, is not losing any of the bits or bytes. So that's what the hash function does it. So hash function takes the input of the various sizes of the data, and then so this is a mathematical function is employed, and this has been discussed in the hardware security session, that what are the hash function mathematical model is. You can go through that video, and hash function employs that mathematical function by taking the various input set of a data, and then generate a fixed length value message that is often been called as a digest. So that hash value is a fixed length value which gets transmitted over the network, and that is the thing for the receiver. So examples for this is like CRC you must be implementing in the many of the communications, even in your DVD devices or maybe the memory devices. So you might have got some message any of the time if there is an error in the reading that your CRC is not matching. So what this CRC that at the different of the sets of data is being taken, and then at the end message is being implemented by the hash function on each block of the data, and a final fixed value is implemented. But that's a weak hashing method because that's a fixed set of bits that is being implemented every time with some increasing of the numbers, and it can be easily figured out that what is the CRC values are. Even in the 8-bit of a microcontrollers, the memory has the CRC values for the communication with the other of the external memories, and based on that the communication is happening. Like your flash has got flooded with the firmware, and now you are implementing some extra flash for the firmware storage, so that the CRC method of a cross-checking is being done, and if the CRC matches, only then the data is being transmitted from the external flash to the main flash. Whereas the strongest hash method that is used is the SHA-256. So what it is, so this hash should be easy to compute, and the mathematical function which you are implementing, that's what should not be very hard enough, so that it will be taking time, and easy to compute the digest for the output. And then the message should not be originally regenerated. So once you have implemented the hash method, once you have printed the hash table and your digest is got generated, so then it should not be reverse engineered, and it could be the original message could be generated. The original message could be generated only by the receiver end, which have the key value available with him. Otherwise, in the mean, it should not be. And it is infeasible to modify the message without changing the digest, and the different. It is infeasible to find the different messages with the same digest. So what happens that the collision is a biggest of a problem. Like if we are implementing the mathematical model, and like what we are doing, that we are generating some random numbers, maybe during this hash function. So there are the multiple of the methods are, and there is a one method is where we are generating the random numbers, and those random numbers are what those random numbers are implemented into the mathematical model, and then this mathematical model takes the input of the data, and then the hash value is generated. So this could be one method. So if I'm taking the random number, so maybe two random numbers could be together, like right now what the random number is generated, and thereafter some time of the communication another random number which might be same. So if we are generating the same random numbers and it goes into the same mathematical model, what the problem we can have, that we will be having the same message digest, and that creates the collision issue of the data. So whenever we are implementing the hash functions, it is always been considered that the collision should not occur. So whenever this provisioning method is used for the hash functions to be implemented, the collision is always being avoided into this. So for an example, like what the message fixed length, what I was talking about, like SHA-256, which I'm talking about. So any of the file size that you will be taking, that will be converted into 256 bits block, and then it is being transmitted over the transmission line. So SHA-256 always been transmitting the 32-byte packet size. So our digest is always been of a 32-byte because it is a 256 algorithm. So 256 bits of a data that it will be transmitting for any size of the file. So whether it is your 1 KB or a 1 MB or any of the size, it will be transmitted like this. So whenever we will be authenticate this thing, whenever we will be authentic, so this hash function was used to authenticate your message actually. So whenever we authenticate this message, it is being termed as the message authentication code or message integrity code. So your SHA table, your hash table is always been considered as the MAC or MIC. In some of the places you will find it as a tag. So till now I have also not been able to find that why it has been called tag, because there is no such meaning for the tag is. And in security there is a frustrating thing that lots of time the same name we have for multiple names we have for the same of the thing. So if you find that why it is called tag, you can always let me know. So what we are doing, so we have the masses, and thereafter the hash algorithm is implemented. The key is punched over it, and then it is a 32-byte digest is being created, and this digest so that gets transmitted over the network. So this is the basic algorithm, and in most of the places where we don't have the features for storage of the keys, like your memory device, like you are connected with some external memory with your device. So embedded level of a security that you need to provide, or maybe two of the ICs that you are that is there on your PCB, and you want to provide the security between those two ICs also. So this method, this authentication method could be utilized, and we don't have to store any key for this thing. So this is the initial method and common method for the embedded security. But once it comes the networked level of a security, or maybe some high level of a securities that you want to implement, where we have to ensure and authorized about the people, then the term comes about the private keys and the public keys and symmetric key, asymmetric key cryptography, where we have to consider about the key establishments and the key agreement things. So there might be the cases like two person who is transmitting the data, who is communicating the data. What are the different use cases could be that either both of them know each other. So it A and B both know each other. That's what could be the one scenario. There is another scenario that A and B knows each other, but whenever and here it is the trust. So A and B know each other, and there is a trust is also there that whenever the data comes, so B is assured that it is coming from A. That's the one thing is. The another scenario could come that A and B is coming in the communication, A and B knows each other, but whenever the data gets transmitted, the A or B, whoever is receiving the data, is little skeptical that whether A is sending data or not. Like here, the individual level of a communication I can talk. So A and B trusts each other. Here, the organizational level of a communication. So B is an individual, and B wants to receive the data from some organization where A is employed, and B wants the data that is coming directly from A, not from any of the third party of that any of the second person of that organization. So whenever the B receives the data from A, he wants to ensure that the data source is exactly A. So then he has then he doesn't have the trust in A actually. He has to establish the trust, and for that purpose, he will be using the identification and authentication method, and then the data will be transmitted. So this also comes under the symmetric cryptography. And then it comes that A and B doesn't know each other. So they don't know each other. Now, if they don't know each other, then what could be the scenario? Then they have to trust some third person, C. And this third person will be knowing to A also and will be knowing to B also. So A will trust C, and B also trusts C. So whatever the data that A wants to transmit to B, so this is got signed with C. So C signs this message, and then A transmits this data to B. So B can trust that it is being signed by C. It means that it is the valid data. So there this asymmetric key cryptography comes into the place, and we can have the public key and private key pairs working here. So these are the different use cases of the communications are. So the symmetric key cryptography is the very much common for the shared key or the single key or a secret key. This is the thing that has been called. So here it is the most and the easiest key cryptography, where we have the single key, and A and B knows, A and B has those key, and that is the identical key. So like there is a box, so A has locked this box with his key. Now there is the same identical key B also has. So once the B receives this box, he will open it with his set of key, which is exactly copy of this A. So this is the most used term, and the identical keys are used for the locking and unlocking of the lock boxes. So this is the bit patterns that I'm talking about. So this is the key, and for encryption and decryption, the same set of key is used. So like what it is, like we have this A, the data is got sent, A, B, C, D, something, this data is got sent, and for each third character, the data is being incremented by 2. So A, B, and then in place of C, it is E. Thereafter, 1, 2, 3. So in place of F, it would be G, H. There will be I. So such kind of a key that is being decided, and this is the most crude form of encryption we have, where we can alter the message, and because the A and B knows each other, and they trust each other. So here the authentication and integrity check. So authentication and integrity, these two things are not required. Only the message confidentiality is there, and that is confidentiality is what, that the sum of the key patterns change, so that there is a key that on each of the third character of the message will be incremented by 2 characters. So that's the only key is, and it is received by B, and Bob just decrypts it. So so he knows that the 2 of the characters is incremented for each of the third character. So he can just decrypt it and will convert it into the original message. So this is the cheapest and the crude method of cryptography, and which doesn't involve the much of the algorithms or the secure or the space, the memories, and the mathematical algorithms for working. So this is it. And till 1970s, this was the most common security methods. But with the exposure to the, but there are the limited number of such mathematical algorithms are, and it is very easy to decrypt these kind of messages. Then this method is getting obsolete now. So until and unless it is a very closed call communication between 2 of the parties, and that device is not in the network, maybe only the very less access of the device is there to the people, like you are having your pen drive, which is always with you. You don't give it to anyone else, and you are very much secured enough. You are keeping a method so that your pen drive is very much secured enough and it gets connected only to your PC, and you are implementing this type of a security. So there, this asymmetric key cryptography method could be implemented, and this thing you can implement into your firmware. There is no separate key storage method or anything is required. In just your firmware where you are sending the data, you can make a mathematical model, you can make a function, you can make a crypto function where you are passing your data. that would be changed as per your encryption methods, and it will get transmitted to the next of the party. So this is the easiest one. Until 1970s, this was the much used, but later on, this thing is getting obsolete because of the regions of the exposure of these mathematical models to the many of the people and the increment of the number of device connections. So then what are the things that will be coming? So here is little more explanation on both of them. So Alice and Bob know each other and trust each other, and Alice can give Bob a copy of her secret key, and the Bob is assured that it is a genuine and trusted. So then it can open it. So that's what is called the relative level of a security. But what is the weakness of this security is that if the multiple keys of the same is been created, like if I have you are transmitting the data, and maybe your pen drive is got in my possession some of the time, and I have decrypted it maybe, or if I know that what is the encryption function you have implemented, I can decrypt that message also. So then Bob doesn't know that message is got compromised, or maybe the message is getting transmitted over the network, and then the some other function is changing the main function also. So whatever the A is sending to B with his encryption code, and one C has eavesdropped into this, and he has implemented his own function for the encryption. So B will be receiving a wrong set of data in that case. So if they trust each other, but that the data is coming from the right source, but they are not assured enough that whether the copy of the keys are available, or the way the Bob is keeping secret this key, whether the Alice is also keeping the secrecy of the same nature. So all these problems can come, and so it is always been secured enough once you are keeping the highest level of a degree of security for your secret key, and the number of keys which you are generating, that should be aggressively managed. So then this thing is obsolete, and if you are not taking care of this thing, or maybe the Bob doesn't know, Bob wants to reconfirm that whether the data is coming from Alice or not. In that case, the Bob has to authenticate it. So the person who is sending this data, and if he authenticates that it is coming from Alice, only then he will be receiving the data and working over it. So then it comes under the symmetric identity authentication. So key is same, still the secret key is being shared between both of them, but actually the authentication will become here, and in that purpose, what it will be done. So Alice will be for the authentication. So once the Bob asks for the identification, so Alice will generate some random number, a challenge, which Bob will answer. So Bob will answer how? Bob will be answering the message. He will be implementing his shared key, this key which he has, this secret key which he has. He will be implementing onto this, and then it will be transformed into a message digest format. So hash function is implemented. It is get converted into the digest format, and then the response is taken, and the response, how the response is being matched. So Alice, what the challenge Alice had sent, so Alice knows that what is the answer for this challenge is, and he will make the answer of this challenge, again implement his shared key, and convert it into a message digest format. And then this crypto hash and this crypto hash, so the digest which is coming from Bob and the digest which is coming from Alice, which is from the Alice, both are compared, And if both have got the same values, it is the 0 is the status value if it gets. So it means the same shared key they have, because the challenge, both of them know it is the same secret key if they have. So the crypto hash will be same. If there is a difference in the shared key, so crypto hash won't remain the same. So this the comparison is being done, and then we have the authentication or identification of the Alice, and then they will trust each other and will provide the message to one another. So this is in a real life scenario. You are having the batteries in your notebook, and how the notebook batteries are got authenticated. So this is a real life scenario you have. So with your notebook and your batteries, both are getting manufactured by a particular manufacturer like Dell or maybe HP. So they are manufacturing the notebook also, and they are manufacturing the battery also for your notebook. And once we need to authenticate that whether it is the right battery for my, means it is the main original genuine battery from my from HP is there, and only then it can connect to the notebook of HP. Then this symmetric key identification method could be used. So how it is being done? So in the manufacturing line, so there is a parent key, there is a main key is there from the manufacturer, and then on the, this is the HSM, hardware security module, this has been generated. This HSM, this HSM is having the key from the manufacturer. Then the hash is got implemented. So for the battery, the HSM module asks to this battery that what is your serial number, what is your unique serial number. So this is stored in a crypto element. So this is a secured, hardware secured area, which is which is trusted that no one will be, which is no one will be altering over. So it asks for the unique serial number. Once the unique serial number is being sent by the battery, then then this manufacturer will employ its shared key, that they call the private parent key over here, and hash is generated, and then it is punched over the battery. So now the battery will have the unique serial number and the parent key. And same way, the notebook will also be having the parent key in its own crypto element. So what the common both of the battery and the notebook has the parent key, which is from the manufacturer. Now, if it is in the field, so in the field, what the notebook has to authenticate that whether the battery is from my source or not, whether it is from the HP or not. So what it will be doing? So the notebook has the parent key, that it knows that what is the parent key or the shared key for the manufacturer. So again, the notebook will ask for the serial number of the battery, and then battery will be having the serial number and this information, the parent key information it will be having. So it will be providing the serial number to its, the hash will be implemented onto this by providing the parent key of the manufacturer, and then a derived key is generated. Now this derived key should be same which is of the battery, because it also has this derived key also has the unique serial number from the battery and the parent key which is there in the battery itself. So this derived key should be same. Now so this is the derived key generation that we have developed for the disposable, and one level of authentication is being done that this is the right device. But still we want to authorize, and before authorization we want to authenticate that really this is the no one else has taken this unique serial number. So in that case we have this a random number challenge. So this is been, so this device is been given a random number challenge, and on this random number challenge, the answer has been there, and then on the answer, the derived key is punched. This derived key is punched. It is the hashing is being sent here, and here the message authentication is being done. So this message should have the answer from the random number challenge. So this random number challenge, which is coming from the notebook, and this derived key, which is there. So this also will be coming over here, and both of them. So whatever the hash value, this, and whatever the hash value which is generated from here, if both are matching, so during the match check, if both are matching, then it is the battery which is there from the HP that we can authenticate, and then we can authorize our notebook to take the power from that battery. Otherwise, we can discard it. So this is a real life scenario that we will be having into this authentication issues. And then, so this is what we have talked about, the symmetric symmetric key trusts, and thereafter the message transmissions. The identifications. And now we have the message transmission. So whether we want to keep the confidentiality of the message, so then the similar of the thing that we have to implement on our message also. So after the identification and authorization, we have to do the message cipher methods. We have to encrypt the message with the key that has been derived, and then we can transmit it. So this is the next level of the confidentiality of the things. So this was related to the symmetric key cryptography. There is a mathematical model and the firmware model for it. So once we will be implementing the crypto element thing, there see how it is written in the programs. Right now, I will be showing you something in the firmware directly, but maybe if you want to implement it, so first you have to go through the IoT things, developing some kind of IoT applications, and then we can implement this thing in the firmware. So once you will be communicating with the cloud, so from the cloud we can generate the certificates from the cloud for its public key, and so here you can just if it is there, I can show you. So the key that could be generated, and that key will be signed by the that public key will be paired with the private key that we have from the device, and then this cryptography method could be implemented. So before this security, the IoT is very much required. So that's what this thing is. The next of the thing is the public key cryptography. So when is the scenario that we want to move little more ahead of this, and in place of only one key, we want the two different keys for the locking and unlocking, so that little more security that we can have, and more persons can open and close the things. So this scenario we have, like, first key locks it, and only the second key can unlock it. Okay, and if the second key locks it, so only the first key can unlock it. So if it is the first key is the private key, and the second key could be the public key. Public key is open and can be accessed by anybody, but the exchange of the key is required for the message digest to open and close. So in this case, it becomes very easy for the distribution, because the private key is there with the device, and public key could be shared publicly, and which could be used by any of the device. So in this case, because public key is in the open environment, so security of the private key becomes very much necessary, so that the pair could not be, your pair should be there with you only, no one else have the access of it. And key pairs, if you are sharing the key pairs, then you are actually posing a risk for your device. So the simple of the method of the public key exchange is that again, that when both of them, whether the Alice and Bob, A and B, know and trust each other, so they can simply exchange their public keys directly to Alice. So Bob provides his public key directly to Alice, and Alice knows that this is the Bob's public key and it has come from the Bob. So genuinity is there. So here both of them are signed to the trust platform previously, and they are in a communication, they are signed to the trust platform, and then it is the authentication is not required in this case because the genuinity that they know. And this is the key exchange that can happen, the public and the private key pair, that can be possible. But in case the right now here, okay, but in case the Alice wants to authenticate that whether she is connected to Bob or not, so then again the authentication will come. So in this case, the genuinity and the trust platform is there. But in this, in the case, they know each other, Alice and Bob know each other, but they don't have the trust that whether they are connected to Bob or not. In that case, again, the authentication method will come. And for the authentication, again, some random number challenge will be generated. So this is the most common method. The RNG is the most common method. And in all of the microcontrollers crypto element, if you see, the RNG accelerator is there. So you can activate the RNG accelerator through your firmware and can generate the random numbers, and then the SAR method could be implemented. So directly the microcontrollers don't have the security features. So the very less of the fuses methods are there. So if you implement the crypto element that I like, there is a chipset ATECC608A from Microchip. So this, if this is the crypto element that you are implementing with your chipset, with your microcontroller, then you can do all these things. So there is the proper firmware method, and the hardware accelerators are there for this. So which is there on this board, which you are seeing right now. So this is the Alice makes this, Alice solves this challenge and put his signature with his private key, because he has to identify that whether the Bob is connected or not. So public key is there. Public key, the Alice has the public key of Bob, but he doesn't have the private key. So he wants the digest with the private key, and so he signs this thing with his private key. Then the digital, it comes as a digital signature format, and then the Alice has the Bob's public key. So then it verifies it has the solution from this random number challenge, and then it implements the Bob's public key over this. And if it is matching, the digest is matching from both, then it is the authentication is been done. So how it is? So the digest is been there from the Bob. So it means that it is secured enough digest, and it has the attribute of the private key from the Bob. So the Alice would be knowing the digest is coming from the Bob, and then by implementing of the public key. So until and unless this digest won't be decrypted, until and unless the Bob's public key and private key pair both are not being implemented over it. So once it has got implemented, if it matches, the digest would open, and then the authentication is been done by the Alice. So this is the asymmetric authentication that we do. And if we go one step ahead of this, that we want to make the confidentiality in the message also. So then we have to provide the everything, the digital signature of the identifications and authorizations, and the hash for and the hash for the plain text. Everything is being signed, and then it is sent to the Bob. So once Bob will receive this thing, once Bob will receive the message from Alice for this digitally signed plain text and the data and the authentication messages, he will decrypt this thing with the help of the public key available and can confirm about the thing. So this is the same thing which I have discussed regarding the asymmetric authentications. Only here the message is got added over it, and the message is going into the digital envelope format. And then here the complete confidentiality comes, where Alice wants to send the message to a Bob, the secured message, and Bob needs the assurance that the message has also not been altered. So till what we have discussed till now, in all of the things, first we have thought about and we have discussed about the identifications and the authentications. We have not talked about the message alterations, but once we are having the message to be authenticated, that it is not altered, then we have this encrypted message format, and in this the session keys are decided. So the whole of the session of a message transmission, the session keys are there, and in this case the is sending the message. So Alice private key is applied on the message. It is got signed and then through the hash, and then in the digital envelope you can see the plain text message which he is sending. That's what also get encrypted and with the public key, because they both are sharing the public key of each other, and then the session key. So this is one more key that has been there, and this is a temporary key. This is a session key, is a temporary key, and this is this is hard coded into this thing, so that if it is a trust platform, on the trust platform, both this session key is hard coded, so that they know that whenever this data is coming, so this would be the session key number. And with this the data is encrypted. With this session key number, the data is encrypted, and then the complete session becomes encrypted in this case. So here the complete CIA, all the things are getting implemented into this case. Same way, if we have to decrypt this thing, so we have the complete digest here with the identifications, authentications, and the messages in the ciphertext format. Then first the user verification has been done. So before deciphering of this text, first this signature has been verified with the help of the Alice public key. So this has been signed by the private key, as I have told you. So it is locked by private key and unlocked by the public key. Then the pair would match. So this thing has been done, and then once this signing information is been authenticated, it is got the message has been clear that this is the really Alice is sending this message, and only then the decryption of the message has been done, and then decryption of the message has been done with the help of the private key of Bob. Because why? Because this ciphertext was encrypted with the public key of Bob. You can see here. So the public key of the Bob has been taken to encrypt this plain text. So Bob will be opening the message with his private key. Only then the private key and public key a pair would be completed, and it would be opened up the message. So this is the same key pair, but to increase this security, there is one more algorithm that has been managed, and that is called the ECDH. That is the Diffie-Hellman algorithm. That's the Diffie-Hellman computation has been done. Here, the cross of key is been done. So once one has to open the things, so like here, Alice has its own a public key, and private key. The Bob also has its own public key and private key. So what it has been done, the public key of both of them are got exchanged. So it has the private key of its own, and then the exchange of the public key of Bob is being done, and then a pair is being designed. And then Bob also has its own private key and the public key from the Alice, and there is another key is designed. So then these two keys are there, and in this key format, the Bob knows this key is called the shared key, and in this shared key, the Alice in this shared key there is the private key of Alice and the public key of Bob. In this shared key, the private key of Bob is there and the public key of Alice is there. So once it is the ones with this shared secret or pre-master secret, this plain text is got ciphered. So then what happens that it doesn't have to wait for the session keys. Actually, this session key is generated automatically. It is not required to hard code the session key into this environment, because if your session key is got deciphered, if your session key is got copied by any third party, then your message will get deciphered. So this is the temporary session key is got generated with this pair, and because both of them have the public keys of each other, so that's why they can open the thing. So here the plain text would be locked by the private key of Alice and the public key of Bob. And once it has to be opened, so in that case, it has the so it has to be opened by what? It has to be opened by the private key of Bob, because the private key of Bob is required to open this thing because it has been locked by the public key of Bob. And for Alice, it is required the public key of Alice, because it has been locked here by the private key of Alice. So it is satisfying the rules for the asymmetric key encryption, and that's how this Diffie-Hellman algorithm is working for the key exchange. So this is the, till now we have discussed that it is the both of them know each other, and then if they don't know each other anyhow, then what would be the thing that we have to do? And here it comes the hardware root of trust or trust anchor things that comes into the action, where a third party is taken into the consideration. So certificate generation parties are taken into the consideration, and these are the some of the certificate generators who is generating a certificate, and then the session is got validated. Here, like in case of many of the times, if you are using the browsers and you see that your certificate is not valid, and you are not able to access the things. Maybe you are using the Microchip cloud environment here, and some of the times during the certificate is not validated, so you will not be able to access the cloud of a Microchip also, or any of the company. So what is this? That the certificate needs, so there is a third party who needs to verify that whatever the message Alice is sending to the Bob is right, because Alice and Bob, both of them don't know each other. So here is like Alice went to Bob's mom to meet. Alice knows Bob. So like you, like Symantec. So you also know Symantec, and the party to whom you are sending this message also knows Symantec. So you are sending the message to the Symantec. So and then Symantec verifies it. So just a cartoon representation, if you see. So Bob's mom want Alice to send her some message, because Alice is going to Bob. But Alice doesn't know Bob, or Bob doesn't know Alice. So then in this case, Bob's mom will give him a trust message, a certificate that she will give him, give her, and that certificate will be used by the Alice. And this certificate will be presented to Bob first by Alice. And if the Bob verifies this certificate, then whatever the message that the Bob will be delivering, whatever the message the Alice will be delivering, so Bob will be knowing that it is coming from the right person. So this is the cartoon representation of it. Hope you like it. So this is the hardware root of trust that it is, and this is how it is implemented. So in this case, in the crypto element, this certificates are also got stored. So in your crypto element, what all we have seen, that we are storing the device identities, thereafter the algorithms keys, if you are taking it, the SA algorithms you are taking, or thereafter you can store your certificates, the public and private keys. And then if you are having the certificates, so those certificates would also be stored under your crypto element. So there is a small a way of certification is, so there is a small this attributes of your certificates are, so it has the versions, the algorithms, the public keys algorithms, and who is the issuer of this, what are the extensions, what is the date, means validity, means this certificate is valid between these and these dates. So this is the generic certification is, and this is the IETF.org has this link where there is a details of the certifications are being given for the different of the vendors. So you can note this link and can go through and read the documentation about this. So this is the X.509 is the digital certification standard, which is being used as of now for the structuring of this certificate. So this is the one more example, like your ink cartridge. So HP in HP printers, you must have seen that if you are using any a third party cartridge in the HP printer, they are not being they are not being authenticated, and you will not be able to use any third party printer into the third party cartridge into the HP printer. So here this a complete method of asymmetric key encryption is being done. So this is the way what it has been done. So here this complete public key and private key methods in been utilized. So there is the license supplier is there, and we are using the root of trust methods for the certifications. So the license supplier is having the public keys and the private keys that it has to assign. So it goes to the OEM and asks for the OEM a pair of the private and the public key that is signed by the Diffie-Hellman algorithm, and then the OEM certificate is generated. And this OEM certificate is punched into the ink cartridge. That's the one thing is been done. Thereafter, the ink cartridge also have its own pair of the public and the private key. So that has been asked by the license supplier. And then with the help of this Diffie-Hellman algorithm, the exchange of the key is being done. So here the public key is being asked, and then the license supplier is implementing its own private key. So through the Diffie-Hellman algorithm, the public key and private key pair is being given as the license certificate, and the public key of the this main manufacturer is also been given. So this ink cartridge have its own pair of the public key and private key, the public key of the manufacturer, the OEM certificate, which is exchange of the public key and private key from the manufacturer, and then the license certificate. And once it gets connected to the printer, so same way as in the notebook, I have described you. So in the notebook, what it is that only the symmetric key cryptography was used. Here in this case, in case of HP printer, both of them, the public key and private key, both of the pair is being verified with the help of this Diffie-Hellman algorithm, where in the crypto element, it has its own, the printer has the OEM's means HP's public key available, and it asks for the OEM certificate first. And once it asks for the OEM certificate, so it has the OEM certificate has what? It has the private key and public key of the OEM. So this has to be verified. So it asks for this thing, and then with the help of the OEM public key, the data is got validated, Then in the next of the method, it asks for the license certificate verifications. So then what we have discussed about the license certificates, this is what is generated. So these the licensees, public key and private key pair is got verified, and then these two identifications have been done, and then the authentication will be done. So for the authentication, the random number challenge is being generated by the printer, and whatever the message digest is coming, again it is got verified with the public key and private key pair, and it is verified that if the digest is received correctly or not. If the digest that is getting received is same as the random number challenge with the with the inclusion of the public key of the OEM, if both of them are same, so it means it is the valid genuine cartridge, otherwise it is an ingenuine and you can discard it. So this is the way for the achieving the security. So random number generations is the most common method for the authentications which has been used. It is so generally we think of the storage of the keys in the firmware of the software, that is the because it can be tempered any of the time. So in that case, or one can change it. So that's why what we have to do, that we should have a separate element in our PCB where we can store all these cryptographic methods and can do the things. So RSA is the most common asymmetric key cryptography method that is being used. So these are the conceptual things related to the implementations and how the cryptography works in the context of the things. But once we have to implement this thing, so there is a provisioning process is there. So through the provisioning process, the public key and private keys pair are being generated, and it is the certificates are attached into this. So that's the dynamic certificates are there, which is attached into the firmware, and then we can implement the complete this thing, the security concepts of security concepts of the cryptography. That's what we can implement. So this is the method is, and if to work around it, so for that purpose you have to first get a good knack on the IoT systems design, and then you can implement the cryptography elements into this. So next of the session we will be taking the cryptography element, but I'd request that just before that you should have you get some idea on the cryptography and the IoT systems implementations, because if we are doing the practicals on the crypto element and you don't know about the IoT systems design and what are the concepts related to this, so then it would be a little difficult to understand actually. So that's what one thing is, and I'm giving you the so how the session was. It's quite long become it is. So this is the feedback link which I have shared you. You can write your feedback over here. And as I was talking that the things related to the IoT. So if you are new to IoT, have not implemented, so we have the programs on IoT, and exactly 3 programs that we have, starting from the beginning to from the novice to the industrial level of implementations. So if you are interested in, so you can just go through the, I'll just share you, and if you are interested, so you can fill up the inquiry forms and our team will contact you for that purpose. So this is the program inquiry form, and here we have the whole set of programs on IoT. So the program which we have all the elements of the embedded system designs and the IoT and security, everything. So there, this is the 3 months long program. This is, which is embedded systems and IoT, and it has the all the elements starting from the embedded system design related to the the peripherals, starting from the 8-bit of our controllers and the communications of the devices, and then we come to the IoT section of it and the security implementations into this when we are coming to the cloud communication. So it has the Bluetooth level of a secure devices communication, the Wi-Fi devices communication, IoT implementations, and security implementations. How do we do with the OTA updates? How do we do the secure boot? How do we implement the crypto element? So everything is there into this program, and you can have good learning. There is a project is also, so you can do the good projects and value the. So you can put an inquiry onto this, and our team will connect you for this. And so this is a 3-month-long program which is delivered online, and then we have the hands-on into this. The hardwares are there, and on the hardwares you do the practicals, and the projects are there. Mini and major projects are there. Certification is there from Microchip also. So this is a global certification, and apart from that, we have a running for you, and you can excel into this. Apart from this, we have the industrial IoT program also. So in the industrial IoT, it is advanced form of this, where for the requirements of the current industry 4.0 requirements, where we have the everything connected and the cloud environments are there, and the current infrastructure of the factory requirements as per the industry 4.0, this program. So where here we are looking more towards the implementations of the gateway designs and the deployments and the distributions of the systems based on the complete IoT infrastructure. So for prerequisite for this program is that you should have the knowledge on the microcontrollers and the embedded systems. Then you can excel into the industrial IoT programs, where we have a more focus towards the clouds and the services related to it, and the storage of our data, than doing the analytics in the cloud. So everything is there, and the security aspects of it. So these two programs are there, and which is there for the career aspects purpose, and make you excel into this domain. If you are new to the IoT and want to get a first hand onto this domain, then we have a small program on IoT systems design, which is a 6-week program actually, where we are having the focus on the microcontrollers, 8-bit microcontrollers, and the peripherals related to it. Then, just a moment. So so here the peripherals related to the microcontroller, and then the communication part of it. So this is the lightweight program for the starters, and if you have not been experienced to the micro embedded systems or the IoT systems, so this is the good program for you to start with, where the graphical user interfaces and everything you can utilize for developing of the systems, and then you can move towards the security systems design. So this is the 3 durations of the programs and as per the different of the expectations levels and the difficulty level these programs are. All of them have the projects that you have to do must to complete the program and the support running. So that's it for today. Next masterclass, we will be meeting for the crypto element and implementing the data into the crypto element, and we will be doing the transmission of the sessions. Any queries now? I am ready to take. This video will be uploaded on the, will be processed and will be uploaded onto the channels of our YouTube channel. So you can, I'll again sharing you that YouTube channel link, and you can go there and have a playback once it gets uploaded. Or if you have missed the previous of the videos master class sessions, so you can always take a review from you. Yeah, very few. So any questions now? No. Okay, so thank you for stay connected. I'll closing this session, and let's meet in the next masterclass series. Thank you.